G'day and welcome to another video on my channel. Now this is a bit of a weird one. You'll see I'm just filming on my iPhone because I'm just doing this quickly, but I had a bit of an instant reloading incident the other night, which I thought was worth sharing with you. It wasn't a big disaster, but it's something that I've sort of known about, but I've sort of always thought, it's probably not a big deal. And that is about powder stability. Before I tell you what happened, I've just been on the ADI website, ADI Powders website, and I just printed up their or the relevant part of their warnings about powder stability. So you've probably read, if you've got an ADI manual, any of the other powder manufacturers probably have some similar stuff in theirs. Talks about storing your powder in a cool, dry place, away from open flames and furnaces and fires. That's all common sense. And then it says here, an average storage temperature below 25 degrees is recommended to obtain a safe shelf life of at least 10 years from the date of packing. Increased storage temperature will reduce the shelf life significantly by approximately 1/3 for every 10 degrees C above 25. So presumably that means if it's 5 degrees, if it's 30 degrees, it might be 1/3, like half of a third, 1/6 as much. So instead of lasting 10 years, it's only going to last sort of 8.5 or whatever. Now this is relevant. All smokeless powders deteriorate chemically as they get older. The rate of deterioration can be accelerated by storage in warm conditions, exposure to other chemicals, and exposure to direct sunlight. Any such deterioration may ultimately lead to fire through spontaneous ignition of the powder. I remember reading that, so when I had this problem, I thought, oh God, and you'll see I was a bit kind of concerned at the time. Check containers of smokeless powder for possible deterioration through age or inadequate storage. Yearly checks are recommended. Chemical deterioration may ultimately lead to some spontaneous ignition of the powder. Chemical deterioration of smokeless powder can be recognised by carefully smelling the contents of the container. Any deterioration produces an acrid acidic odour, quite different from the normal sweet smelling odours of ethanol or ether that are usually present. So I quite like the smell of smokeless powder, when you open the container it smells kind of okay. Rusting of metal surfaces exposed to smokeless powder can also indicate deterioration. Remember that point. And then it goes on to say, deteriorated smokeless powder should be disposed of by carefully burning it in thin layers, not more than 10 millimeters deep, in small quantities, never more than 500 grams in an isolated location. Do not light the powder directly. Always use an ignition trail of slow burning combustible material so you are able to retreat to a safe distance before the powder ignites. I didn't burn mine, but I'll go to that in a minute. And then it just says, store powder in original containers approved for the purpose. So that's the thing about deterioration of powders. Now, I knew all that, I've read that before, but I've never heard of anyone having powder go off. I've heard of people who've, someone's given them an old tin of Nobel No. 1 from the 1960s and they've opened it up and it seemed all right, and they've loaded up some cartridges, it seemed fine. And so, I understood that it was a thing, but I sort of thought it must be pretty rare for it to happen. Anyway, the other night I decided I knew that I wanted to load some heavy 174 gram Keith projectiles for my 357 Magnum. Now, if you go back through my videos, I'll put up the top when it was probably a couple of years ago. I actually loaded up some of these Keith projectiles in the 357 using ADI AP100 powder. Now AP100 is now obsolete. It's been obsolete for some years, but I still had a container of it, and it's the slowest of ADI's at the time. It's the slowest of their pistol powders. So it was a good powder for that application. Heavy bullets in a large pistol case. So yeah, you'll see that video. If you look back, I loaded up some ammo, and that's the last time I used this AP90. So if you look at the date on that video, that'll give you an indication of how long ago it was I last opened the container. You'll see the container was $40. I can't actually remember when I bought it, but it would be at least probably 15 years ago, something like that. Yeah, because a container of powder now is like 150, I think, or something like that. So I thought, oh, I'm going to mold some projectiles. Now, I actually recently bought another revolver, which I'm going to put a video up, so I won't let the cat out of the bag at this point, but using the same projectile. So the other week, I thought I'll do some molding, and I molded up a few hundred of these 174 grain Keith 70-watt cutters. And I loaded up for this other revolver I've got. And I thought, oh, well, I might as well just top up my supply, because these heavy bullets, I only use them at the 50 meter CSD match. They're very good for that. High ballistic coefficient, and they maintain their velocity. I knew there was only a little bit left in that container, probably like that much in the bottom of the container from last time I did it. So I thought, oh, I'll just use up the last of that powder, and I'll load up some of these Keith projectiles that I've loaded up, get rid of that powder so that, I don't have it anymore, because you can't buy it anymore, and then I can move on with my loads and develop another load. So I went out to my shipping container where I keep my powder. When I opened the cabinet, the first thing I noticed was that there was two things I noticed. One was that the actual container, the AP100 container, kind of had all this moisture. Now, it's been the wet season here, it's been very humid. But I have had a humidifier. I just got one recently in my shipping container, so it shouldn't have been too humid, but it just had like condensation on the outside of the black plastic container. Well, that's a bit weird. And then the other thing that was weird was the old steel container of AP90, original AP90 container, which goes back even older than the plastic AP100 container. That used to be like in really quite good condition. It's sort of like a painted sort of thing. I've got some footage on it, so I'll show you that container. This tin of AP90 that was next to it, as you can see, last time I saw this tin, maybe a couple of months ago, it was like, it's actually painted, I think, rather than being a label. I think it's actually painted, this tin, or anyway. It's an old tin, but it had the label was in really good condition. Now, as you can see, the label's all damaged, and the tin was a bit rusty before. The tin's really rusty. So I'm actually going to put this powder into another tin. Yeah, so as you can see, obviously what's happened is the powder in the AP100 containers deteriorated, probably produced some pressure, which has actually leaked some, because it was well sealed. It was proper sealed plastic powder container, but obviously it's pressurized enough to have leaked some, I think it's probably sulfur dioxide, like back from my chemistry days. That's what it looks and smells like, that brown gas, or gas, I suppose it is. You'll see in a minute, I've got some video of it. And I think that's leaked out, that's reacted with the moisture in the air, produced sulfuric acid, and then that's actually just deteriorated the outside of this steel container. I do, and of course, if this happened again, hopefully it doesn't, I'm going to move my powder to a cooler location. I do live in the subtropics, so it gets pretty hot in my shipping container. But if I have powder deteriorating again, and I have signs like this, I'd know straight away. But I didn't pick it up at the time. Anyway, I went inside, set all my stuff up, set my powder thrower up, Argon RCBS powder thrower, and I kind of I sort of sit on a chair. I've got my powder dispenser bolted to an actual sawhorse, like a carpenter's sawhorse, so I can move it around. Put it in the corner and they can bring it out. And then I just sit on the chair next to it. So I unscrewed the container and I went to pour it into the powder thrower. And two things happened immediately. First thing was like, oh my God, it was like someone had poked a red hot poker up my nose. I obviously breathed in some of this vapor and it just burnt the crap out of my nose. And I didn't know what was going on. And at the same time, I was starting to tip the container because it's fairly empty. So I was tipping it over a fair bit to tip it in. And all this brown vapor started coming out, which just reminded me right now, I might go and get my powder thrower and actually run some water through it, because I've probably poured some of that vapor into that and it's probably eating away at, because it seems to be heavier than air, it sort of pours out. It's probably sitting in there eating away at the inside of my powder thrower as we speak. So I better go do something about that. yeah, anyway, so I thought, oh my God, and then I looked, and when I looked down into the container, as you'll see on the film, the powder looked brown, but I think it's just because it had this brown vapor sitting inside the container. And immediately my thoughts came to this ADI where it says they can get spontaneous ignition and all this, and I had kind of visions of it kind of bursting in my hand. Luckily, I'm just near the back door, so I quickly opened the back door, rushed outside, and there was a aluminium, outdoor table there, so I put the powder on that, so at least if it caught fire, it wasn't going to burn the house down. And then I filmed this little bit of footage. So I've just brought this outside for safety. I just opened this container, ready to do some reloading, and immediately there was fumes coming out of the container and an acrid smell that burnt my nose, like sulfur dioxide it seemed to be, or something similar. Now you can see how old this powder is by the price of it. I think a big bottle of powder like this, what's that, 500 gram powder, one of these is like $150 or something now, I think. But anyway, if we just take the top off of this, go under the light, you can see it's like a weird, normally the powder's grey, it's a weird red colour. Can you see that? See the fumes coming out? Not good. Bit of a shock, really. Have a look, see what the powder looks like. The powder itself still looks kind of normal. It's just the whole container is full of this red gas, or red vapor. So clearly I'm not going to use this. I've been reloading for about 35 years or something like that. First time I've ever come across it, but I've learned my lesson. I've learned a lot. I'm going to be moving all my powder out of the shipping container. I've actually set up a lockable cabinet down in my shed, which will be cooler than the shipping container in the summertime. So I've set up a cabinet down there. I'm going to move my powder down there. But even the powder in cartridges you've got to think about as well, because I've got that powder loaded into. Actually, I've just about finished them, so I don't think I haven't got it loaded into anything else. But I've got about I don't know, it's probably a dozen of those cartridges, 357 cartridges left. So, but whether it needed the oxygen in the container to break down, I don't know. So, but anyway, I'll probably just shoot them off quickly and get rid of them. But yeah, so I just want to put this out, so just to put it in your minds that yes, it is a thing. It is something worth considering. Where you store your powder. It's difficult here in Australia because everything has to be locked up and all that, and often we have limited places where we've locked up. We might not want to keep the powder inside the house, and so you're keeping it outside in the shed or whatever. It can get hot. Anyway, stay safe. Keep this in mind. Keep what I've told you here and shown you here in the back of your head, and so hopefully in the future you'll avoid this happening to you, and if it does, you'll sort of know. You won't be stupid like me. You'll know straight away what's going on. So that's about it. Until next time, thanks for watching.